Welcome everyone. I am Dr. Simranjeet Kaur, Professor at School of Law, City University, Ludhiana, Punjab. It's a pleasure to have you all in the session of law as an instrument of social change. Law is a fundamental force that shapes and reshapes society, influencing norms, values, and justice. Today, we will explore how legal framework evolved to address social issues and drive transformation. By end of this session, you will understand the historical evolution of the laws in India and its impact on the social structures, the role of the constitutional provisions in promoting the social justice, how legal reforms have addressed the major social issues such as gender equality, caste discrimination, and human rights, the contribution of the judicial activism in the shaping legal precedents, the challenges and the limitation of law in achieving the equitable social change. After these lectures, learners will be able to explain the dynamic relations between the law and the society, identify key legal reforms that have led to the significant societal transformation in India, analyze landmark cases that have shaped the Indian jurisprudence, evaluate the effectiveness of the legal interventions in addressing the social issues, understand the role of the citizen and the legal institutions in advocating for continued legal progress. So, let's start exploring this interesting topic. Law is a dynamic instrument that a society uses to adjust human relations and eliminate social tensions and conflicts. It serves as a mechanism for delivering justice, which is fundamental to creating the peace and the progress within the society. The ever changing nature of the society necessitates the change in the law, which can be achieved through amendments to the statutes and the acts. Similarly, the interpretation of the laws by judiciary reflect the evolving needs and the values of the society. Law plays a pivotal role in shaping and reflecting the societal norms, values, and expectations. In India, the relationships between the law and the social change has been significant and complex. Historically, law in India has been influenced by the colonialism, religious traditions, and the need for the modernization. Post independence, law in India has become a tool for addressing the social issues, promoting justice, and facilitating the change in the various aspects of the society. Here is an overview of how law functions as an instrument of the social change in India. Historical context of the law in India. Colonial legal system. Under the British colonial rule, India inherited a legal system based on the English common law. However, the system was primarily designed to serve a colonial interest, leaving many traditional practices and societal norms unaddressed. Abolition of sati system. The sati system, an ancient Hindu custom where widows were expected to immolate themselves on their husband's funeral pyre, was formally abolished in the Bengal Presidency on December 4, 1829 by the Governor Lord William Bentinck. This act was made illegal and punishable under the criminal law. Although the ban was initially challenged, it was finally implemented in 1832. While the abatement of sati was not explicitly listed as a special offence under the Indian Penal Code, the judiciary has ruled the abatement of sati is akin to the abatement of suicide, punishable under Section 306 of the Indian Penal Code. The Sati Prevention Act of 1987 was introduced to address the resurgence of the sati cases in regions like UP, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan between 1980 and 1983. This legislation made by the abatement of sati punishable by the death sentence. Today, the sati system is virtually eradicated in India, demonstrating the law's significant role in transforming societal customs. Post-independence transformation. After India gained independence in 1947, there was a strong desire to reform the legal system to reflect the values of the equality, justice, and fairness. The Constitution of India, adopted in 1950, became the cornerstone of the legal and social transformation. Constitutional framework and the social justice. The Constitution of India. The Indian Constitution ensures fundamental rights, Part 3, and the Directive Principles, Part 4, that are aimed at the promoting the social justice. It guarantees equality before the law, prohibits discrimination on the various grounds such as caste, religion, gender, and disability, and seeks to uplift the marginalized community. Affirmative actions, provisions like reservations for the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and other backward classes in educational institutions and the government jobs have played a crucial role in promoting the social equity and reducing the caste based discrimination. Understanding the law as an instrument of the social change. Law serves as a mechanism for regulating behavior and resolving disputes in the society. However, its role extends beyond mere regulation to actively promoting the social justice, equality, and empowerment in India, where social stratification and inequalities have been deeply entrenched. Law has been a powerful tool for changing discriminatory practices and promoting inclusivity. How law as an instrument of social change in India. To illustrate the instrumental role of in social change, it is essential to examine the key transformation that have occurred in India. Change is inevitable, and understanding these changes demonstrate the dynamic nature of societal evolution. Law as a catalyst for the social reform. Abolition of untouchability under Article 17 of Indian Constitution. One of the significant legal reform post independence was the abolition of untouchability. Through the constitution and the various legislative measures, laws were enacted to eradicate the caste-based discrimination. The Hindu Code Bill 1955 and 1956. The Hindu Code Bill was instrumental in modernizing family law, particularly with respect to the women's right. It gave women greater autonomy in marriage, inheritance, and property rights, challenging the patriarchal social norms. The Dowry Prohibition Act 1961. This law sought to curb the social evil of the dowry and protect the women from exploitation and abuse. It marked a shift in how the law could intervene in entrenched social practices. Judicial activism and social change. The judiciary in India has played a proactive role in shaping social policy and addressing societal issues through judicial activism. The public interest litigation, which we also called as a PIL, introduced in the 1980s. PILs allowed citizens and NGOs to approach the courts to seek justice for social issues such as pollution, human rights violation, and the government accountability. This empowered marginalized group and contribute to the major legal reforms. Rights-based jurisprudence, the courts have expanded the scope of the fundamental rights, especially through the landmark judgments like the right to privacy, right to education, and decriminalization of Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code 2018, which had criminalized the consensual same-sex relationship. Law as a tool for the gender justice. The legal system in India has been a key player in advocating for the gender equality and the women rights. The Protection of Women from the Domestic Violence Act 2005. This law provides women with a legal recourse against the domestic violence, thereby changing the legal narratives about women's autonomy in the marriage and the family. Sexual Harassment of Women at the Workplace, Prevention, Prohibition, Redressal Act 2013. This law was introduced to ensure the safer working environment for the women, providing them with the framework for redressal in the cases of the sexual harassment. Legal reforms in the economic and technological context, economic liberalization and the laws. The economic reforms of the 1990s led to the several legal changes, especially in the areas related to the business, trade, and the property rights. Law were modernized to facilitate investment, competition, and globalization. Intellectual property rights. The introduction of the stronger IPR laws helped India become a more competitive player in the global economy, encouraging the innovation while balancing the protection of traditional knowledge. Digital laws and the privacy. With the rise of the technology, India has enacted new laws to address concerns related to the data privacy, cybercrime, and the digital freedom. The Information Technology Act 2000 and the Personal Data Protection Bill 2023 are the examples of the how legal system is responding to the challenges of the digital age. Challenges and critiques in inequality and access to the justice. While laws have been reformed to address the social justice, access to justice remains a challenge for the marginalized and economically disadvantaged. The judicial system faces a backlog of the cases, and the legal process can be slow and expensive. Enforcement of the laws. The effectiveness of the legal reforms often hinges on their enforcement. In many cases, law intended to protect the rights of the vulnerable groups are poorly implemented or remain unenforced due to the social, political, and economic constraints. Religious and the cultural resistance. Some legal reforms, especially those that challenges the traditional practices, faces resistance from the certain sections of the society. For example, laws on the interfaith marriage, conversions, or the caste based discrimination sometimes encounter societal pushback. Maintenance rights for the Muslim woman. In the landmark case of Muhammad Ahmed Khan versus Shah Bano Begum, All India Reporter 1985, Supreme Court 945. The Supreme Court ruled that if a divorced Muslim woman is unable to maintain herself after the period of iddat, that is the post-divorce waiting period, she is entitled to maintenance under Section 125 of the Code of Criminal Procedure 1973. This decision sparked the controversies and led to the enactment of the Muslim Women Protections of the Rights on Divorce Act 1986. The Supreme Court clarified that CRPC provisions apply to all the religions, including Hindus, Islam, Christianity, and Zoroastrianism, emphasizing the secular nature of these laws. Free education as a fundamental right. Supreme Court of India has ruled that right to education is a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. In the case of Mohini Jain versus State of Karnataka, a five-judge bench held that right to education is intrinsic to the right to life and the personal liberty, guaranteed in Article 21. However, right to free education is specifically available only to the children until they reach at the age of 14 years. Beyond this age, the state is obliged to provide the free education based on its economic capacity. Subsequently, the legislature amended the constitution to introduce the Article 21A, which made the right to education free and compulsory for children between the ages of 6 and 14 years. Introduction of the public interest litigation. The Supreme Court has adopted a broader approach to the locus standi, allowing the public spirited individuals to bring the matters of the journal or group interest before the courts, even if they are not directly affected. For example, if individuals are unable to approach to the court due to the economic constraints, a public spirited person can file a appeal on their behalf. This approach has enabled the greater access to the justice for marginalized and disadvantaged groups. Right to information. The right to information is a crucial instrument of a law for the social change. The Supreme Court has upheld that the freedom of speech and expression as guaranteed by the Constitution includes the right to receive and impart the information. This was affirmed in the landmark case of State of UP versus Rajanarayan in 1975, where the court recognized the importance of the transparency and accountability in governance. Compulsory registrations for the marriage. Marriage laws in India are governed by the personal law, while the Christian Marriage Act 1872 mandates the compulsory registration of the valid marriages. Hindu law originally left the registration as an option. However, the Supreme Court of India has ruled that the marriage registration is mandatory across the country, irrespective of the religion. This directive ensures the marriages are recorded in a secular manner, enhancing the legal recognition and protections for the couples. Law relating to the prisoners. The philosophy behind the laws relating to the prisoner emphasizes the reformation of the punishment. The idea is that since criminals are the part of the societies, effort should be made to reform them rather than simply punishing them. Prisoners are entitled to all the constitutional rights, including the right to read and write the books, use of parole and release on the bail, ensuring their fundamental rights are protected even while inculcated. Abolition of the polygamy. Polygamy, the practice of having more than one spouse simultaneously, was prevalent in India with few restrictions. Under Islamic law, a man could have up to four wives, but the Indian Penal Code of 1860 made bigamy, marrying another person while already married, a specific offense under Section 494, except where permitted by the custom. The Indian Christian Marriage Act of 1872 also prohibits polygamy among the Christians, reflecting a broader societal move towards the monogamy as the accepted norms. Prohibition of the child marriage. During the colonial times in India, the child marriages were common, with the spouses often unaware of the implications of the marriage at such a young age. To address these issues, laws prohibiting the child marriages were introduced. These laws recognizes that children are not capable of understanding the complexity of the marriage and aims to protect them from the early and often harmful marital relationship. The Child Marriage Restraint Act of 1929 came. This act aimed to restrict the child marriage rather than abolish them altogether. It defined a child as a person who, if a male has not completed the 21 years of age and a female had not completed the 18 years. The act was introduced after the recognition that all religions prohibits the child marriage to some extent. While the act did not completely eradicate the child marriage, it marked a significant step towards recognizing the harmful effects of the early marriages and seeking to prevent them. Abolition of the slavery system. To eradicate the slavery from the India, several legislative measures were introduced to criminalize and penalize the practice. Section 370 of the Indian Penal Code makes it an offense to import, export, remove, buy, sell, or detain a person as a slave, punishable by the imprisonment of up to 7 years and the fine. Similarly, Section 371 of the Indian Penal Code imposes the penalty on those who have habitually engaged in slave related activities. Furthermore, Article 23 of the Indian Constitution prohibits trafficking in the human and forbids the bonded labor. The Government of India enacted the Bonded Labor System Abolition Act 1976 to eliminate the bonded labor practices despite various efforts to address the bonded labor. The Bonded Labor System Abolition Act has been the most effective measure in combating this issue. Elimination of the Child, the Employment of the Child Act 1938 was enacted to prohibit the employment of the children below the age of 15 years, recognizing the importance of safeguarding their rights and ensuring their proper physical and mental development. Law and the prostitution. Prostitutes are often victims of the societal circumstances, surrounded by the criminal elements such as kidnappers, pimps, drug pushers, murderers. Recognizing this, the Supreme Court issued the directives to the government and the social organizations to take appropriate steps to rehabilitate prostitutes and their children, emphasizing the need for the compassion and support rather than punitive measures. Recognition of live-in relationships. The Supreme Court has acknowledged that while sexual contact should ideally occur within the confines of marriage, there is no statutory offense for consensual sexual relations between the unmarried individuals. The court has recognized that live-in relationships between consenting adults do not amount to any offense, even though they may be viewed as immoral by some. While live-in relationships are not legally recognized as marriages, Indian courts have taken significant steps towards protecting the rights of the individual in such a relationships. Various judicial pronouncements have shaped the legal stances on live-in relationships, especially in the terms of the domestic violence, property rights, and inheritance. Protection under Domestic Violence Act 2005. One of the major legal advancements for the people in the live-in relationships came with the protection of the women from the Domestic Violence Act 2005. The law recognizing a woman in a live-in relationship as a wife and provides her the same right as a legally married woman in the case of domestic violence. This was significant shift in acknowledging that women in live-in relationships should be entitled to the protections from the abuses and exploitation. Judicial interpretations. The Supreme Court of India, in the case of Khushbu versus Kaniyamma, held that living together for a long period of time could establish a relationship in the nature of the marriage. The court emphasized that the live-in relationship should not be seen as immoral or illegal simply because it lacks the formal registration. Live-in relationships and inheritance rights. In the case of Indra Sarma versus VKV Sarma in 2013, the Supreme Court ruled that a woman in a live-in relationship could not automatically claim the status of a legally married wife unless she could prove a long-term continuous cohabitation with the partner. However, the court also stated that a live-in relationship was a long-term and had the characteristics of a marriage, such as mutual support and dependence. It could be recognized for the purpose of inheritance. Protection of children in the live-in relationship. The legal recognition of the children born out of live-in relationship has also evolved. In the case of Payal Sharma versus Nari Niketan in year 2001, the Supreme Court held that children born to the couple in the live-in relationships would not be deprived of their right to inheritance. The court recognized that right of such children to claim their inheritance, recognizing them as legitimate, provided the couple have lived together for the long period and held themselves out to be the husband and wife. Public interest litigation. PIL has been instrumental in enhancing access to the justice for the marginalized and disadvantaged group in India. By relaxing the traditional concept of the locus standi, PIL allows the public spirited individual to approach the courts to address the issues of the public or group interest even if they are not directly affected. This has been a crucial tool in promoting social justice and holding the authorities accountable for their action. Origin and evolution of the pill in India. Conceptualization. The idea of pill is rooted in the recognition that traditional litigation system, which relies on the individuals directly affected by a legal issue, might not serve the need of the society at large, especially for those who are unable to approach the courts due to the poverty, ignorance, or other barriers. Judicial activism Pill in India became the essential part of the judicial activism, where the judiciary expanded its role to protect the fundamental rights and address societal issues. It began in the 1970s and 1980s, inspired by the notion that judiciary could step in and address public grievances even if the individuals affected by them were not able to approach to the courts. Landmark cases The term public interest litigation was popularized in India by the Justice P.N. Bhagwati in the case of Hussaina Khatun versus Home Secretary State of Bihar in year 1979, which concerned the illegal detention of the under trial prisoners in Bihar. This case highlighted how pill could be used to protect the rights of the vulnerable group even when they themselves did not file the petition. Key features of the pill non locus standi. In the traditional legal system, only individuals directly affected by an issue can approach to the courts. However, under pill, any public spirited citizen or NGO can file a petition in the interest of those whose rights have been violated, even if they are not directly affected or a party. This expands the access to justice for the marginalized and voiceless section of the society. Focus on the public and social interest. Bill is generally filed to address the public wrongs or issues of the national and social importance. This could include the violation of the human rights, environmental protections, consumer rights, and issues affecting the poor, underprivileged, or vulnerable communities. Judicial activism and accountability. Public interest litigation gives the judiciary the power to directly intervene in the matters that are otherwise overlooked by the executive or legislative branches. It has become a tool for holding public authorities accountable for their actions or inaction on the social, economic, and political matters. Access to the justice Pill serves as a mechanism to ensure that even those who cannot afford legal representation can have their issue heard in the court. This makes the judiciary more accessible to the broader population. Laws for the rape victims. The Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013 was enacted in response to the widespread protest following a brutal rape case in Jammu and Kashmir. The Act introduced stricter punishment, including the death penalty, for the repeat offenders for the crimes of the violence against the women and the girls. Additionally, compensatory measures were introduced for the rape victims, recognizing the need for the support and rehabilitation. Female infanticide is deeply rooted social issues in India, shaped by the centuries of the gender discrimination, economic pressures, and patriarchal norms. Although the significant legal and social reforms have been made to address this issue, the practice persists in some regions due to the enriched cultural attitudes and the socio-economic factors. Tackling the female infanticides required a multifaceted approach, including legal reforms, education, and social awareness to create a more equitable and just society for women and girls. To address the issue of the female infanticide and sex selective abortion, the Government of India enacted the Preconception and Prenatal Diagnostic Techniques Act 1994, which banned the use of prenatal sex determination techniques. This law aims to protect the lives of the girl and ensure the gender equality. In concluding remarks, law has been and continues to be a powerful instrument of the social change in India. Through legislative reforms, judicial activism, and proactive roles of the legal system, India has made a significant strides in addressing the social inequalities and promoting inclusivity. However, there is still much work to be done, and concentrated efforts are needed to ensure that law remains a force for the positive change in Indian society. India has witnessed numerous social movements that have leveraged the law to the challenge entrenched social norms. These includes the movements from the rights to the women, Dalits, tribes, sexual minorities and other marginalized groups. Environmental movements, legal frameworks such as the Environment Protection Act 1986 and bills related to the environment issues have been crucial in empowering activists and communities to challenge the industrialization and ecological degradation. Law in India serves as both a reflection of its society values and a tool for enacting the social change. From the abolition of the untouchability to the promotion of the gender equality, the protection of the environment, India's legal system has been instrumental in shaping a more inclusive and just society. However, the true potential of a law as a vehicle for the social change can also be realized with effective implementation, constant reforms, and active participation from both the judiciary and the society. I hope this session has provided the valuable insights into the role of law in shaping social change. Keep questioning, keep learning, and keep advocating for the justice. Thank you for watching this program.